Joanna Morgan, ex-jockey, ex-trainer, sort of a hobby trainer now, trained a couple of horses just to get me out of bed in the morning because I don't play golf, I don't do anything else. I was born in Wales. My mother is still well alive and in great form, thank God. I learned to ride. My mother's family were all farmers, and sort of riding ponies bareback, chasing sheep. There was no such thing as those quads that time, you know. If you didn't ride a pony, you couldn't be herding sheep on the hill, like on the mountain, you know. So you had to learn to ride, and I used to spend a lot of time up in the farms and that. And then I sort of graduated. I went to pony club, and then I rode in a couple of points in Wales, but I was too light. It was only the start of it, really. And did a good bit of eventing then. And then I met a girl. I was actually teaching at a pony club rally there, and I met a girl, and she was secretary in McGrath's, and she was an English girl, and she said if I wanted to go to Ireland, and she'd get me a job in McGrath's, and I was mad to go to Ireland, like, you know, horses. All I ever thought about was horses. So I had a couple of old ponies and horses. I was breaking in there, and I sort of got rid of them, and I came over for just a 6-week holiday initially. And then when I was going home, the boss said, if you want to sign on anywhere, you know, come back to me. So this was only the start of it. I think there was one girl had been apprentice jockey at that stage, and just starting. It was only a real new. I mean, they'd had a few ladies races, I think, in Ireland before I came, but there was no professional jockeys like. So anyway, I came back and great, did well. Rode a win, I think, my 5th ride, and when we first went in Tipperary on a filly called Alacapella. That was a ladies' race, would you believe? I was apprentice, all right. I'd ridden in 5 apprentice races, or 4 apprentice races before that. But there was a ladies' and I could still ride in that. And I went down in the horse box that time, like, you no other way to get there. But I could remember the elation, like passing the line, you know what I mean? It was great. Kids gave me a thing of all my winners. It's up on the wall there, you know, that I rode. And I can remember every one of them. Every one of them I can remember as if they were yesterday, yeah. I was the only girl riding really against the lads, and they were a bit sceptical at first, you know. They thought like I'd knock them down and get in the way, and like they were a bit sceptical. And funny enough, that the senior jockeys, the better jockeys, didn't really mind me, but the lesser ones were sort of afraid I'd be nicking their rides, you know. So like you'd be maybe sewed to the fence an odd day or whatever, but you know, you do the same back to them. So it was, you soon got out of that, you know. Less runners, like I was looking back to old form books. There were, you know, more runners in handicaps, obviously, but didn't seem to be, and it was more spread out. It wasn't quite so, you know, centralised. But it was great. I mean, I was so lucky because then they were promoting women riding all over the world, and I got these sort of freebies. Well, at first, how I escaped, I mean, the winters were harsh in McGrath's. I was apprenticed to Seamus McGrath near Leopardstown, and like, you know, the cold weather, and then we used to trot up and down this lane, up and down, 3 times every day, and the horses were so bloody fresh. And it was all cinders, and it was all black stuff, and if it got into their cut or whatever, their legs would blow up. So when we came in, like, it used to be absolutely freezing, and I hate the cold anyway. And we used to wash all their legs. Like, you'd be hanging onto a colt. There was no one to hold the horses. You're hanging onto a colt, trying to wash his hind ankles and joints with a bucket, a steel bucket. And the next thing they kick the bucket, the whole blimmin' yard would be scattered. You know what I mean? But like, it was hard. I didn't like those winters. McGrath was always sort of pro women. There were about, I'd say there could have been, he'd 100 horses that time, which was the biggest, you know, in the island. There were about 8 women and probably 20 men, like, you know. But he was quite forward thinking. I mean, they were great. Like, I mean, they were great to mind the horses and look after them. And I mean, they all had to ride out, obviously, as well. And then he'd another Claire Devlin took her apprentice licence out. But they were quite good riders then. I mean, they weren't bad riders, the girls there. But it was just sort of snowballed with me because it was sort of, you know, it was a novelty, number one. You'd have to get changed in the ambulance room or something. There were no really changing facilities. But even now, like a lot of old timers my age, they'd all know me. If I went racing, like old fellas, there's even a lad that sends me a card every Easter from, and he's a sort of a, you know, a guy that would have been following me from I started, you know. Well, actually, what I started doing very well as a jockey apprentice, and he rang Frenchy Nicholson, and he said I'm a very good apprentice because he'd sent over Pat Edry, Richard, what's his name, Ollie Gray. His son is the stable lads representative in England, Richard Fox, and he said, "Oh, I've apprentice I send over to him, you know, it's the same as the others, you know, ride's good, like." And oh no, once he heard it was a bird, no way, yeah, no interest, no. So that's at least the Irish trainers were far more accepting, actually. I probably wouldn't have got on as well in that day in England, you know. They would have been too sort of old-fashioned, look down their nose at your bird riding, no, you know. But the Irish lads would say, should we give it a go? You know, but oh, should be grand. So after the first couple of winters, I had a cousin who was training in Kenya. So, and the husband was a steward. And I got him to write me an official letter inviting me to ride in Kenya because I said I can get an hour here for the winter. So I went over there, great crack. Buster Parnell was over there, and little Johnny Currant, and I rode a winner over there, and that was great fun. And then I came back and I got an invitation to go to Brazil. We went to Sao Paulo. It was like girls from all over the world, really. There was a German girl, there was a New Zealand girl, a couple of Yanks, and the couple of girls from Brazil. And oh, it was great, like fantastic opportunity. And, you know, I rode a winner in Brazil then. And I think the next year I got an invite to Japan, and that was, I remember sitting one day signing 1,000 autographs, oh my God. But apart from that, the riding was great. I rode a winner in Japan, and then where did I go? Oh, I went to Australia then, yeah. There was another ladies race promotion thing again, but I didn't come back. I said I'm going to stay here for the winter. So I got a job in, it was in Melbourne, the race, and I went up to Sydney, and I worked for Neville Begg, who's an absolute gent. He's still alive, great fella. And I rode a winner for him. Then I got nearly killed. The last ride I had, the horse ducked across in front of me, jumping out the gates, and spun me up in the air like a top. And it was on the telly the footage was on the telly for ages, and I came down and I broke my femur, and then I got a fat embolus, like it was big, and my mother had to fly out. They thought I was going to die, and it went to my lungs, and but I didn't. Anyway, I'm grand. And the way I rode everywhere. Like I went to Germany, I rode in a race there. Elaine Meller, she was riding over there. Stan Meller was her husband, and she actually was out in Brazil too. And there was girls from New Zealand. Anyway, when I went to Australia, it was they were a bit more encompassing of women, you know. And I rode in. I went over to New Zealand. I rode in Australia. I loved Australia, absolutely. I wouldn't have come back. Only I sort of was doing so well here. I'd have loved to have stayed in Australia. Great opportunity for young people, and still is, I think, and women. A lot of girls riding out there. Yeah. I had a ride at 7'7". That was basically then, when I was claiming it was 7 stone, and then for the big handicaps it was 6'9". You had to ride that, or whatever you could do. I actually was supposed to carry 6'7" that day, but I couldn't do 6'7". I did 6'9". But then, you had to be sort of 7 right at 7-7, you know, which was, they had to be 7-3 all the time, you know. You know, you'd be twice as starving thinking you couldn't eat for 2 days type of thing, you know the way you'd be. And then, oh, I had a garden flat down there down by the sea there, JOCKEY. And there was Teddy's ice cream. Oh, bit of Jesus. I used to go out and have a few drinks and I couldn't stop myself. I have to wheel into Teddy's ice cream. The whole thing would go haywire then after that again. But, oh no, it was, but even, I remember going down to likes of Tralee and that, you know, overnight meat, oh grand. And say for instance, you'd have a light the next day and you couldn't eat. So I could either eat or drink. So I'd rather have a few drinks. So I'd maybe be struggling to do 7-7 today. And I'd do 7-7 and I'm like, Jesus, I'll have to drink. But I tell you, if you wanted to lose £7, drink bottles of hap, well, they'd just straight through you. You'd be so dehydrated the next day. You'd have a head like Hollyhead. You couldn't freaking head, and you couldn't have a drink because you put on the weight back on. But by just they were great, those bottles of hap for losing weight, I tell you that. No food. You couldn't have food though. The best ever, I can tell you. You'd lose fucking £7 a night. I'd be out fucking flying around the place. Next thing, whip, piddle for Ireland. And the next thing, you'd be as late as a gate the next day. But the head, oh my Jesus. Yeah, I stayed in McGrath's until he retired then. And I couldn't take it. Always wanted to train, and I couldn't take the trainer's license out. So my sister was over. So we got the license out in her name. So I started training a few horses in McGrath's. And then he completely retired. I started training in Dunsany. I bought a house, I think it was for £8,000 in Sandyford when I maybe was going at the riding. Then I sold it for £28,000. Then I borrowed money and I bought a farm up in Dunsany. And I was training I rented a yard. There was nothing on the farm. So I rented a yard off Lord Dunsany and he used to gallop on all his paddocks. Poor Lord Dunsany. I'll never forget, he had a lovely big field, about 40 acres. We used to gallop all the time. And I was looking at them one day, looking over the fence, you know, and they were coming around, flying around, working, you know. The next thing, Lord Dunsany lands beside me. He's gone a bit dodgy. Yeah, he said, who's in those horses? Why? I have no idea. I said, I was just wondering that myself and I doing this to them. Keep going. Anyway, but we had all, Jesus, the place must have been in flitters because we were galloping everywhere around this place. Never galloped on my farm, mate. I said that for spuds. But anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so Adrian, of course, Mickey Maguire, who used to ride Donald Clark's daughter, the jockey, he was a jockey one time. And he came to me as head man. He was a brother to Adrian and Finney, poor Finney that died with Jerry Cully down in Cork. Adrian's brother. And they were with me. And Adrian he was a very good rider always. I remember bringing him up one day to Barry Kelly's to gallop a couple of breezes. And I could see, I was riding one and he was riding the other, and I could see this yoke starting to hang with him. And I was just about to say, pull your stick through, Adrian. And before even it came out of my mouth, he had it through. You know what I mean? He was just sharp and good. And so he was there then. He was getting heavy and he went down to Michael Harrigan's then. And then Jason was Mickey Maguire's son and he was apprenticed to me. And he was a good rider. Poor Finney died, Adrian's brother. And then I came here, and then Sean Smullen came, I got him. Then he brought on Pat, and he was just a natural. He was only riding about a week. I'd say he never sat in a horse. I had an old pony I was after breaking. And I said, you want to go hunting? Oh, yeah. Oh, fucking, this pony was only riding a week. He was only riding a week. But off they went, and they still came back in here. But he was always a very serious, good head on him. Lovely fella, Pat. Yeah. And then, I suppose, I sort of wanted kids. I was 30, and I must have been just a body clock, you know. And so anyway, I met Tommy McGivern, had 2 kids, lovely kids. Then we moved here. Then he left. And so I'm here ever since, yeah. I took 8 years out. I had the 2 kids. I was training here And that was the time of sort of Pat Smullen and Sean Smullen, his brother, and that. And then I had to make a living at the training, you know. I was buying and selling horses and breeze up horses and doing okay at that. But anyway, I sort of had to go back. I was sort of stuck here on my own, more or less. I'd only an old lad in the yard and one lad, like. And I started riding out for Noel Mead, and I took my licence back out. And I was telling someone the other day, it was very funny actually. So anyway, I decided I was getting the trainer's licence back, a rider's licence back out, because the kids were in school. And I remember the first day I rode was at the Curragh. And I rode, the first horse I rode was, firstly I went down to the jockey school down in the Curragh. I said, geez, I'll get up on this old mechanical horse, you know, and just see how fit I am. Well, I was up on him about 3 minutes, and I couldn't, and my legs were that tired, I couldn't get down to press the button to stop him. I nearly fell off the mechanical horse. I was so unfit. But what could I do? I was booked to ride 4 horses at the Curragh. So the first ride I took for Oliver Finnegan, and it was a mile and a half. But Jesus, I was after going about a mile, and luckily enough they go down to a bit of a dip at the Curragh and you can't see them. I just had to sit in the flat of my ass for a furlong, then back up again, round there. And my legs were absolutely buckled after I jumped off the horse, I'll never forget. And then I was riding in the next race for Halford. But cheers, I fell off at the winning post going down to the start. I was wall falling. And I came out with that, I got fit again. You don't realise how unfit you are. After, you know, I thought I was fit, riding a bit of work, you know. Jesus, I tell you. And they reckon, like, you know, in athletes, the jockeys are the fittest, you know. You have to be, like, because every part of your anatomy has to be fit for that job. Anyway, that was me comeback. I suppose you always remember your first winner. And then, of course, the big thing was beating Leicester at the Phoenix Park. I mean, that was it was all in the papers. And, you know, it was so big that time. And, of course, that time, when I first came to Ireland, you know, people either played hurling or football, or they went to the races. There was no alternative things, you know. So there was buckets of people at the races, and everyone was so interested in it. So that was a very, very big thing. And the funny story about that is, my daughter, who was, as you know, is now married to Tom Hall from Wexford, and she went down. She'd been going out in about 6 months, and she went down for supper or whatever, and the next thing they went in, and she looked up at the wall and she said, we've that photo at home. And anyway, the father said, no, you wouldn't have that photo. Oh, yeah, so we have that photo going up the stairs, she said. He said, no, you wouldn't have that photo. He said, because that was a very famous day when Joanna Morgan beat Lester Piggott on my horse, Mount Eaton. And she said, because he didn't know that I was her mother, you see, because she's McGivern. Anyway. So anyway, now they're married. Isn't it funny? Well, look, I was just the first, I suppose, but I was capable enough and hardy enough for the job, and there wasn't anyone really in Ireland. I see Ireland is so competitive. I mean, apart from the great Rachel, of course. Cathy Gannon was very good. She was champion apprentice. She rode for John Ox, and she went to England since. But yeah, they're few and far between, especially on the flat. I was Wally Swinburne and George McGrath, and they were all nice. The top lads were nice to me. George and Johnny Rowe and Liam Ward, that was the lad I was thinking of. Yeah, he was riding for Vincent. And Leicester was gone. I used to bring Leicester back and forth to I had a car, and I used to ferry him back and forth from the Phoenix Park, you know, to the airport. But she never said much, like. I remember going in the stewards after. I beat him at I think it was a short head or something. And because the Phoenix Park was hopeless. You couldn't see. There was no head on, like. You know, you were sort of half looking down on it. And, you know, they all stewards to the Leicester, and, you know, excuse me, Leicester, you know, what have you to say? And I said, well, I thought I kept straight, blah, blah, blah. And Leicester, what have you? Sorry, is that? That was it. That was it. You couldn't. He couldn't give it down, and he couldn't. Like they couldn't hear him anyway. They just let me keep the race. I was the first one to ride in the Irish Derby. Yeah, the McGraths actually sponsored it that year. I rode a horse called Riot Helmet, and I wasn't able for them. But the strange thing about it was, in a derby, I mean, they go 5 furlong pace, and they just keep going, 1.5 miles. That is the difference of riding in it. They just went, and your man, he actually ended up, he didn't run too bad, but he did finish last. But he came out the next, about a month later, and he won a maiden 30 lengths in Naas. And that's the difference class in them. These, like, they just went, yeah. Different gravy, guy. You know, you're riding in the Group 1s, like, you know. And then I was lucky, like, I rode in the Peter Labay. I was 4 for John HASSETT. I mean, he was a great character, and I used to ride a lot of horses for him, and, like, he'd have him well handicapped. And this filly, she won the Rockingham. I won the Rockingham, and then she was beaten about a length, I'd say, in the grade, you know, the Group 1. Abbey, like, yeah. Rode a lot of handicap winners, rode the big handicaps, like the Lincoln and the, you know, Cambridgeshire and stuff like that. All the big handicaps. I never rode a group winner, no, I never rode one. I only ever trained 30 or 40 was the most I ever had. I would have had it hard, to be honest with you. I suppose the best of good staff, but it was always difficult to get good staff. And because there's no money in training, honestly, at my level, there was no money in training. So, you know, you always one lad short. You always running around trying to pick up, otherwise you weren't even balancing the books. Very hard to get good staff even then. I was lucky, I had some very good girls. Marie McCarthy, great girl. I know that plenty, I did have good staff along the way, but never enough staff. And now I think it's even more serious. You can't get them. There's no horsemen. I mean, 20 years ago, if I was stuck on a Saturday, there wasn't, you know, I was just busy, and I'd go up the village, there'd be few lads you'd pull out of bed and he'd be able to ride a horse. There was no one can ride horses now. There's no one has a Mac. They won't go out in the rain. They have a little fluffy thing like this. They don't have any waterproof clothing, like, you know. And of course the Gordons and the bigger places, I mean, Gordon, because, you know, there's lads going in there that want to be jockeys, and they ride plenty of rides, you know, and there's more crack and there's plenty of things. But even my daughter's the same down in Wexford, like, she's a small entity, and lads like to go into a big yard and have the crack, you know. But it's very difficult to get staff now. The Brazilians are great, like, there's a load of Brazilians in Ireland, and they really are good riders, great horsemen. Well, you see, they're not as practiced. I mean, if you think about it, like, I was farming bred. You could be one generation removed from farming. But the more urbanised people are, the more removed. I mean, they think a cow is like something you see on a cartoon now. Do you know? And, like, and they don't have a sort of a physical work ethic. They might get up in the morning and play with their iPhone or, but, you know, they don't just get out and do anything physically. It's just the way things have gone. You see, they didn't have any alternative sports. I mean, now they're betting on football, American football. They can go water skiing, they can, if they want to be involved. But most of them, in my mind, now are couch potatoes. They'd rather sit and watch everything here and don't really get involved. So that's why it's good to get kids out and about and interested. Albeit there were a huge influx of young people in Fairyhouse the last day. I mean, massive. Even my son, he went and he said he couldn't believe the young people that were there. So it is good. And I think it might come back because things go in cycles. And where does anyone go now for the crack? To go out. I mean, it's all very well, you can go to a football match and maybe 2 of you go and you look at the football and you might have a pint after. But people I think it might come back because people will congregate at the races. It's a day out. So few days out now. So few days out to go anywhere. I mean, I love going racing an odd time I go now because it's a day out. People I think the COVID didn't help it either, you know. They were happier to sit and watch everything on a screen. It's very bad for your eyesight watching screens all day. really is. Oh, you know. I mean, my eyesight is perfect. Not so good long sight, but perfect short sight. But then I wasn't looking at screens all my life. Do you know? If you fall on the flat, it's like falling off the roof of the car at 40 miles an hour onto the road. Like, it is, you know, the ground is harder, you're going quicker, and it's suddenly, you know. So you usually do break something. Every time I fell in a race, I broke something. Oh, I broke everything. I broke, starting from the ankle, femur, knee twice, hip, loads of ribs, hands, as you can see, neck, shoulder blade, collarbone, that one twice, nose, teeth kicked out, no arms. I never broke an arm, touch wood. That's about the height of it. Well, I gave it up, like, I mean, and I was going over to visit my mother in Wales, and I was buying stocks and shares, and I was sending all the breeze up horses down to my daughter, because I wouldn't mind to manage the colts now, and especially if they're fresh. And I was buying and selling yearlings, but then the bloody yearlings would get real fresh, you know what I mean, before you send them to the sale. And I got a couple of clips on the head, so that was the end of that job. But then I was so engrossed in my business that I never had a hobby. I have no hobby other than horses. So, I mean, I have plenty to do here. I have to do paint posts and rails, I have to spray weeds, I have to do the harrowing. I have 100 things to do every day, which is grand. But I still love the horses, you know. It do you good. As they say, you know, the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a man, you know. So it's just to be around them, really, you know. I don't think the times have changed that much, quite frankly. A good horse is always good. I remember when I was in McGrath's, and we used, if they were real fresh on a Monday morning, the yearlings, like, we'd go halfway down the lane, whip them out the side, and there was a grassy 3 furlongs down where the stalls were, and we'd let them rip to get their backs down, you know. And but they're good ones. I can remember them. Furry Glen, they were Alan Grange, he was a mile and a half. He was a ledger horse. Just could do it. They could just do it. Good horses can just do it. You don't have to teach them how to do it, because they're just naturals, you know. Furry Glen was there, of course. Oh, Mart Lane, there was a lovely horse called Mart Lane. He went to St. Simmons Stakes in Newbury. Crafty Codger. There was loads of good sort of Group 3, Group 2 horses there. Weaver's Hall was there. He won, I think he won the Irish Derby. Alan Grange won the Ledger. Oh, there were some great horses that time, alright, yeah. Mother kick the foal, or bite the foal, or, I mean, you know, I've had kicks of horses, and I can tell you, it's not like me hitting them with a stick. I mean, weight-wise, it would equate to a kid of 2 hitting me with a pencil. Weight-wise and strength-wise, a kid of 3 with a pencil. Like, they wouldn't honestly hardly feel it. That's my opinion of it. Now, you can't abuse them. And like, it was amazing at Cheltenham. They looked so good, and they got the best out of the horses without. But you do need a stick for correction. And it's good because it did go a bit over the top, you know. But as a last resort, now, you know, some of them, some horses you wouldn't have to hit them. They'd run to they drop. But an odd one would be lazy, like, I mean, especially over jumps, you know. And old jumping horses that go onto the flat, then they don't want to know, because it's not they see the jump, you know, they're just get into a lob with you. But look at it. Everything has gone a bit woke, you know, now. It's hard to know. Well, I don't know, initially, you see, they'd say, oh, she wouldn't be strong as a fella, you know. But, like, it's fitness, it's knack. I could hit a golf ball, not that I do play golf, but any time I went and did play it with someone, I could hit the ball, be Jenny, from here to the Beliver. I was just it's timing and knack, you know what I mean? And so, like, you know, look at Rachel has dispelled that theory anyway of strength. The horses run for it, you know. To a point, it's certain girls and certain not. You know, like certain girls would just be too laid back. Certain fellas would be too laid back. They'd be great. There was lads in McGrath's when I started there. They were great horsemen. Little fellas. Most people were small at that time anyway. And they were great horsemen. Good riders. No good to make a horse go fast. They just didn't have that sort of aggression in them, you know. And the horses would, you know, they do work at home, but don't bring them to the racecourse because they didn't have it. Like, there's hundreds of funny stories. I mean, I could tell you a million funny stories. You mentioned a trainer and I could tell you a funny story. But John Hassett was the greatest character of all time. And he'd stop horse for 2 years, like. And the next thing, I'll never forget, I was riding one I was in Killarney, I think it was for Tony Redmond or something. And it was well fancied, this yoke on here. And it was a thing of Hassett's going around the parade, you know. And the next thing he left a couple of barks out. And I said to Tony, Jesus, did you hear that thing? I said, don't mind that. He said, that'd be trained to do that. You know, fucking, like, you know, yeah, like, he'd have every trick in the book. And another time I was riding for Hassett, and this thing was, he was going to have a few quid in it. I didn't know, like, I was just booked to ride it. And the next thing, and he came in, the race before something. He said, that thing doesn't man. Jeez, pity, you know. Didn't think any more about it. But anyway, it transpired that the price had been taken, right? And the next thing, the stewards come in. And they said to him, you know, why did you do thing? I said, I couldn't catch it. And I'd say he was in the stable yard and gone home. He said, I couldn't catch it. That was it. End of story. Freaking price gone. Oh, the lad I trained the winner in Royal Ascot. Yeah. ROCATUMA. Yeah. It was a great day. I mean, oh my God, that's another story. I had a very good lad here, a Pakistani, and his father died. And he couldn't go. So I got a fella who actually did hold a license one time, I won't name any names, to go with him. So he was a bit out of practice, but even he landed here and he had a white shirt on him, and I'm thinking, Jesus, like, you know, anyway, off he went. And the next thing he gets in, he leaves the bag of horse feed in with the horse. The food in bag, in horse, right? So the next thing, he sort of went a bit AWOL. Actually, the dad, he was leading him around the car park instead of in the enclosure. He was leading him around the car park when Katie got there. So he was a hot big horse. Like, he was a big colt. Like, Jesus, he was a big monster of a horse. And Katie was trying to sort of diffuse the situation because he'd sort of fallen out with the lad in the gate, and he went, oh, look at. Anyway, so we get up, the horse is running anyway, and the Queen wins the first one, I think. And then Lady Cecil the next one or something. The place is off the head. Like, I mean, there's heat like this, it's boiling hot. The horse is off the head. Katie's trying to hold him. Here comes your man beside him, and he's holding him this side, and he's a bag of fruit, like you'd get off Lily, in his other hand. And he was swinging this, and he was hitting the horse, having a stifle with the bag of fruit, and the fucking horse doing it. So anyway, Katie was leading him. He was starting to sweat up. I mean, it was like an amphitheatre there. Everything was sort of, you know, Royal Ascot, like. And here was your man with hold of him the other side and swinging a bag of fruit and hitting him on the stifle, and your man kicking out. Oh, God, Janie. And the next thing, Noel Meade, he had actually broken a rib. The first day he ran, he'd squashed me up again the saddling stall. And he was too big for me. And I'd asked Noel Meade to saddle him. Anyway, Noel Meade was had a drink up with one of them Hannons. And I think he said, I forgot. But he was, I mean, literally, where they've all gone into the parade ring. They were nearly gone out of the parade ring before he came with the saddle, and he flying across the thing. Anyway, we got the saddle. I mean, I was so stressed. I went into the weigh room to watch it because, like, I mean, it was just, the whole thing was... And I probably would have backed him. I mean, I had told, in fact, we were getting $500,000 for him about 2 months before. And I said, oh, he'll win at Royal Ascot. You know, just chancing my arm, thinking, well, at least I'll train him if he does win, you know. Anyway, the next thing, down he goes. And Willie, the only cool thing in the whole lot, the horse was fractious, I was fractious, everyone was the same. But there was Billy Lee, the great Billy Lee, and off he went down and won anyway. Fantastic. And we did get $1 million from him actually then, yeah. He was a great horse, yeah. Oh, he won a Group 2 in Hong Kong. He went to Hong Kong, yeah. And he was placed in the Group 2 and he won a couple of handicaps there. I think they probably got the money back on him the first day. They gave him a couple of little tickles and the next thing, he won. And, you know, the betting in Hong Kong. And then after that, he ended up, funnily enough, with Neville Begg, the guy I rode for in Australia's son, and he sent me videos of him on the beach. It was a great story. I mean, the fact that he did end up somewhere like that. But that was a great day, yeah, great day. Oh, I don't know if it, like, it was hardship. It was hard, tough work. Hard work. And as I said, you know, if you don't have enough staff, you're filling in the gap. I could drive a horse to the races, I could clip a horse, I could ride a horse, I could, you know, you never stop. I was doing all the secretarial myself. I was doing, well, Katie came then, she did me a hand with that. But up until that, and, oh my God, it was hard work, boy. And it is a stressful job. I don't care, anyone would tell you it is a stressful job because I could manage, you know, I just didn't really, I suppose, and I couldn't even afford enough staff because it was not a viable concern if I had, but they weren't there. That's the bottom line of it. And the owners, I never had a bother with the owners. I could manage them all right, and not too many bad pays. The horses were grand. I could manage the horses, but it was just a hard slog now. You get a bigger, probably, high with the riding, but with the training, it's more, you know, that's what was meant to happen, and it happened. You know, you're not as elated, but it's just satisfaction of it happening. A lot of times it doesn't happen. Oh yeah, I trained an awful lot of horses out of the field, yeah. But I mean, this was pre-oilseed rape. I remember when there was 10 out in that field, geldings all out, there's 8 acre fields, plenty size. And there was like a corral, if you wanted to catch one, you'd get them all in, you'd catch one or two, whatever. But I mean, I used to just bring them in, throw them on the lorry and send them to Galway. And they'd win, you know. That's the way I'd train them, like. Au natural. But they're so, I mean, you know, you wouldn't train an athlete and incarcerate him in his bedroom for 23 hours a day and expect him to run like the clappers. You give him a heart attack. So they were, you know, probably healthier, much. And they'd always be best in May because there's more in the grass. An old vet said to me one time, I had a horse years ago and his blood count was down, you know. And I said, what's the best thing to give him, you know? The May grass. You know, better than anything. There's not much you can give them now anyway to improve their blood count, like. But the May grass is the man. In my opinion, you couldn't do little enough with them. You couldn't do little enough with them. I mean, if you pulled a horse out with a fielder, he galloped 3 furlongs as quick as any horse that was in training. You know what I mean? I do think people gallop. Mine used to last forever, like. You know, they'd be still running with a 12 or 13 because I never did much with them at home. I mean, I'm not saying you have to get horses fit. Of course you have to get horses fit. Certain horses and, you know, jumping horses is a different ball game, that. You know, you have to do a lot more hardship with them, but flat horses, Jesus, you know, they don't. I mean, I'll tell you another good story. I used to write for Larry Greene a bit, another smart fella. And I remember riding an L1-eyed horse called Mascari, and he ran away. He had ran away with Stephen Crane and Mick Cannan on the Curragh before I got on him. He booked me to ride him in a race, and it was a windy day, Jenny. And he'd only one eye, and he was huge. And Larry said, look, he said, whatever you do, don't touch his mouth, he said. Get up on him anyway. He said, hold on to the neck strap. So I'm thinking, he's going, and he starts quickening down toward the sand. And he said, when you get this stall, tell you, whoa, 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 and he'll pull up. And he was after passing 2 or 3 out. I said, Jesus Christ almighty. But I was afraid to touch the reins. Anyway, pulled up. And he won, came back and won. So I was riding him the next March, Paddy's Day. And Larry came, I said, Joanna, I don't have any jockeys. He said, I've been lunging him all winter, he said. Doing a bit of lunging, he said. But he said, I did bring him to Carrigan's now. He said, a fortnight to go and gallop them, he said. Won. So that'll tell you, if they're any good. I mean, I think those national hunt horses, they just do that. And they just keep going. It's different with the flat. But on saying that, and saying that again for myself, Willie Mullins, for instance, would be very good with fillies. And if they don't, see, if you're too nice to fillies, they start thinking for themselves. They think, I don't want this carry-on. You know, you can't be, those fillies now get clever quick enough, you know. So you don't want to give them too many opportunities to. So for the national hunt television, Willie's very successful in national hunt horses. And I mean, you just need them to get into this zone, as far as I can see. Actually, the mare that runs tomorrow's in foal because I love her dearly and I didn't want to sell her. But no, I never had a day's luck at a brood mare. I always said I'd never take a present of a brood mare. Only I kept this one now. You know, never say never. But no, I never had much luck at the mares, no. Well, I have to maintain the farm. I do loads of that. Go over and see my mother. Babysit. Takes up quite a lot of time. But other than that, well, no, I have great interest in the, you know, I have 2 yearlings out there actually, yeah. I bought a national hunt one because I had a very good horse called Raise Your Heart years ago. He was top dollar, lovely horse. And I said he was out of the Val-de-Vedette family, you know. And I said, I'm going to nick one of these one of the days. I'm going to keep an eye out. You know, I looked up more of them and then they were making too much money. Anyway, I bought the one there. He's by Hillstar, but he's out of Sister de Shiskin. He's that family. Great family. He's out of Val-de-Vedette, actually. He is. And I have him now. He's going to be castrated now one of these days. And then I had to buy an Arizona horse to go with him. There, 2 yearlings out in the field. And I have 3 breeds up horses with Katie. One is a Magna Graecia. She breeds today. She's selling tomorrow. And I will a Brevido with Bassett and a Sioux Nation. But they're with her, because I can't handle them. They get too fresh, you know. No, I have a great 111. He was my marvellous horse, this lad. He was bred in Argentina. He was bought, Father Breen said to Jack Doyle years ago that he wanted a national hunt horse. And Jack used to go to Florida every winter. And he went to the Breezers. And he saw this lad and he wouldn't even go on the track. He was a colt and he was so cheeky and he stood on his hind legs and he wouldn't go on the track. But he was a lovely model. So Jack bought him. Anyway, poor Father Breen couldn't afford to pay for him. So he got 3 nice lads, Finbar, Andy and John Clancy, in for, but he got a sort of honorary share, which he never had to pay for the outing. Anyway, he was a great horse. And I got him back, and there was a bit more mature, those American horses. And I had him here, and I remember cantering around my gallop. My gallop was gone too hard. I had to quarry sand on it. I could only hack on it. It was really hard. So I was hacking him around one day, and it was a sunny day, and I remember hitting him a slap down the neck, and its tail went. Oh, I said, this lad, you know, I don't think I'll buy a leg of him, you know. Anyway, I never galloped him. He hacked around my gallop, Anyway, I had a filly here who came from David Hanley actually, and they couldn't train her because she kept getting set fast, tied up. And I was training her out with the field. And I had to give her a bit of work. And I said, I'd bring this lad with him. And Jason Maguire was my apprentice at the time. And we brought him over to Pat Burns. And Adrian Maguire was at home. But Adrian started with me as well. And Adrian Maguire was off on holiday back home from England. And I said, Pat had a good horse that was third in a first class handicap in Leopardstown. And I said to the lads, oh, he had a good gallop too, like 7 furlongs up a bit of a pull. I said, lads, give that black mare a bit of work there. I said, she's running in Roscommon next week. So anyway, I said, look, I'll follow you up on this lad. Bearing in mind, this lad never breezed. He never went over hat canter on my gallop, ever. I jumped off behind him. They were flat to the mat, and I was clipping heels. It was just a good horse. Just a good horse. He can just do it. He just could do it. So anyway, he won 13 races. And that time he won for $500,000. He won in Abu Dhabi. He was fourth in Belmont. We got freebies. That time they were promoting these races. Jesus, we got brought back to Dubai. All 4 owners and spouse, first class. Horse flew over. The only thing we had to pay was the one to mind them. They had a lad there doing all the mucking out and everything. And no feeding. Anyway, he went from Hong Kong, then we shipped him to Dubai, and he won in Abu Dhabi. But anyway, we all went out for the World Cup. And I went out a couple of times because like I was training by fax at a young one. Anyway, the young one, she was falling off him. I didn't know I didn't know when I got there. About a week before Abu Dhabi, she had fallen off and he was a bit lame. Apparently she was falling off every day, but I didn't know that. I was here. So anyway, I was swimming for a week. Druba, one of them lads, gave me I could swim. Anyway, swam him. Boom to Abu Dhabi. Kieran Fallon rode him, won the President's Cup in Abu Dhabi. So anyway, the next thing I came back and we all went over for the World Cup then. He was in it, like, not in the sprint end of it. I'll never forget, Jesus, poor old Father Breen. He was a great character. But anyway, we had to get on it was a connecting flight in Heathrow. So, get on the flight, in first class, albeit now. And so, get to Heathrow, and it was so late. The flight from Dublin was so late. I just picked up my bag and I ran like I'm wait for me. So he had to wait for someone with a thing to push him in the thing. You know, I said, Jesus, I kept going. Anyway, I just got in, the door was shut. The next one was just to start the mobile phones, you know. And he was getting first class and all the freebies and everything. Oh, lovely. Anyway, next thing I'm sitting down, light a big cigar. Fucking cigar. You could smoke then, it was lovely, yeah. Light a cigar, glass of champagne, you know. And it wasn't selfies, I couldn't send a photo. I just sent him an S-Tef. Tough. Anyway, he was stuck in Heathrow for 2 days. But he came on anyway. Oh, he great crack. And a whole posse came over, like my friends and everything. A load of people came over. Oh, Jesus, it was great crack. They gave it a free roof. We had a place to stay and everything. So I did full of people. And staying on. Probably, yes, he's buried in the garden. Yeah. Well, he was 13 when he died, you see. I had him a long time. Yeah, he was a great horse. So he's a good horse by. He won a couple of grade 3s, like, and he won 13 races. He was a very good horse. You train him on a 6. You train him. You wouldn't have to gallop him. He's just a great horse. Well, he was always interested in the horses, and he started off in thinking about. He was from Cavan. He started off in Ballymun, then he was on the Navan Road. And he used to call into Josie and Eileen, the 2 women that used to mind apprentices in McGrath's. They had a house there, like. And he was always mad about the horses. And he used to call into them. But anyway, he was in the Navan Road then. And then he went up to Glencullen. He got a parish in Glencullen and built a lovely big house. So he was in and out of McGrath's the whole time. So he was like, you buy me an old horse, and you know, this kind of. But anyway, he was so lucky. anything he ever had. We were giving him complimentary shares because he was so lucky, you know. But we'd great crack. Jesus, great crack. I had loads of horses from like Show Blessed, and he was into them all, like Moore and Graw. Oh, his gas ticket. More summer jumpers, yeah, more summer jumpers. But I trained a winner at Leopardstown, you know, Christmas Festival, and that Raise Your Heart won a couple of listed hurdles, and plenty of them. There's Show Blessed he won, and there was Jawad he won about 7 fences, and plenty of them, yeah. But they were more summer horses, I would say mine, more so. I'd always buy a balanced horse. Most of them I bought, they were just balanced. If they're balanced, they'll jump. There's no, you know, rocket science. They'll jump. If you see them balanced, they'll walk. Of course they'll jump. I like a good female family. I like a good pedigree, obviously. But if you get the two together, you can't afford it. But I like a nice individual, yeah. He has to walk the walk, and nice eye. Yeah. Oh, I love the sales. Oh, I love the sales. Love buying and selling horses. Yeah. I mean, look, that's what kept me going. Not the training. Training is an expensive hobby, really, you know. Oh yeah, I bought one last year, 2 years ago, for 38 grand sterling. And then, of course, my son wanted a leg of it, so I sold him the leg of it. And my daughter got a leg of it to keep, to prep. And she made 140 in 6 months later, like. She's actually running the French Guineas. She won her only start, it's her second start she won. But she's good filly, yeah, by Sioux Nation. Lovely black filly. Yeah. I had a couple of them now, like grand. There was one cost 26, she made 130, I think, a couple of years back. Now, they don't all make money, obviously. Well, I do like money. And it's harder to train them, all right. You see, you're selling a dream, you know. Basically, you only get out of life what you put into it. You have to work at it. I mean, I was heavy. I lost a lot of weight. I mean, like I rode at 6'9", like that time. You know, you have to ride at 6'9". That was what you had to do to get started, like. And but it was it was harder. The weights were tough at that time. That was it. I mean, I'm not heavy. I'm probably as light as I ever was now, but I've no muscle, you see. I've no muscle tone. It's easy for birds to keep the weight down because they don't carry as much muscle on their torso. They're just not that way. Well, but I was heavier when I was fit, obviously. It was just a nuisance, like, you know, you'd end up with a bad relationship with food, really, you know, because you were eating, and then, of course, they didn't have these dietitians like they did then. You'd stuff yourself after you rode, and then you'd have to not eat for 2 days, you know, this sort of nonsense. That's the way you'd do it, like. And sweat and saunas and stuff. But look, you only get out of life what you put into it. Like, you have to work at everything and be passionate about things. And, I mean, I do think I was lucky to have a passion, because if you're passionate about something, you do succeed, by and large. You know, you'll work and you'll find your way around everything. And, you know, it's not easy now. But, look, I like working anyway, so it wasn't difficult, I suppose.